My presentation for the Public Administration the News Project is regarding cybersecurity and how it relates to public administration. We are in a time where everything is growing more connected. We have devices that can monitor pipeline flow, traffic patterns, people patterns. Basically, anything you could think of, you can put a chip in, connect to the internet, and use it to monitor, track stuff more intelligently. We're also seeing a massive rise in cloud computing, which means that apps, programs that would normally be stored on the computer are now in the cloud. This also is true for data. The good thing about that is that it allows people to have better access to it. You're not limited to what's just on a physical computer or maybe on a server in a building, but you can access your information anywhere. For example, I use Dropbox. I'm able to get my files on any device that I want, any computer that I want. It does add a lot of efficiency to our operations. On the other hand, it also provides a lot more opportunity for malicious actors to get a hold of our data and to get into our systems. The more things you open up, the more opportunities there are for attack. That is why cybersecurity is incredibly important now and will only grow more important as time goes on. You can look at the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack that occurred in May, or we can look at previous incidents like WannaCry, Stuxnet, the SolarWinds hack. You can see the devastating effects that improper cybersecurity and malicious actors operate in the cyber landscape can have. Specifically, looking at Colonial Pipeline, that was a ransomware attack in May 2021. They were able to insert malware, which is a malicious program, onto Colonial Pipeline's computers, and it's not exactly clear what was shut down. They say they shut down their network to prevent further spread. It was also reported from CNN sources that Colonial Pipeline shut down their pipeline due to the billing system being shut down. They weren't able to bill, so they shut down service. We're not sure exactly what's correct, but regardless, they supply 45% of the East Coast's gasoline. So with that, you now are looking at potential shortages. People begin to panic about potential shortages, which then leads to panic buying. With panic buying, you see gas stations all over the East Coast are running out of fuel. This created quite a crisis, which then the administration had to respond to. And they responded by mainly reassuring people that there was not a supply issue. It was instead a temporary disruption that was going to get resolved, but the gasoline did exist. Biden also signed the executive order to try to strengthen cybersecurity, create a task force, removing barriers, which is standard administrative tactic, and that's something that we as potential administrators would look at this guideline of, okay, now we're authorized to do more. How do we then execute upon that? We also see they established a cybersecurity review board to go through, review these incidents, and find potential future vulnerabilities. Now, the interesting part about the U.S. is that while we have these rough guidelines or ideas, boards, there is no general guideline or framework for how cybersecurity is handled. That is different than the European Union, which has the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which basically says this is what privacy is online. These are the things that you have to do as a company to maintain private data, and then sets up a list of penalties if you don't. We've had incidents in the US where there'll be a data breach, information will get out, the fines aren't that punitive to the point of where it's almost cheaper just to pay the fine than it is to spend the money to protect your data. And that's the company's going to look at it from a dollars and cents. Well, if it's not going to hurt our reputation too much, if we're going to save money, this is a better choice. As administrators, especially as politicians, need to realize that that's not the appropriate answer and needs to establish a better policy to do it that we can enact to actually enforce these regulations and protect people. And if you look at it, while in the European Union they have a governmental guideline, we've traditionally went with a in the US instead, it's been a situation where the companies themselves have established standards. For example, you have FINRA, which is the financial industry's regulations. They establish their own company, create a set of standards, which then they have outside assessors from cybersecurity companies come in and monitor. You also have the payment card industry has their own set of standards as well with that. Now, it's interesting that the federal government has been looking more at this. You have CMMC guidelines, which are the Defense Department's guidelines for if you are a defense contractor, there's a certain minimum standard you have to meet for security, and then that has to be assessed by an outside company. My company is one of those ones doing that, and that's a product I've been selling. We also see situations where the products you provide to the government have to be up to a certain level. For example, one of our cloud voice services, we had to increase security and increase security at data centers so we could meet the government's qualification. It's as I go through my paper more so, I discuss how cybersecurity is a wicked problem in the sense that it's very complex, there's a lot of factors involved, and there's a lot of moving parts with no clear solution. You have a lot of actors at play, and more so because it's not just the government. They're not going to be able to develop everything in-house. They need to have outside contractors provide services, provide software, which are then open to gaps. So they have to try to control it as much as possible and provide these minimums and review them more and more. And that's going to be what is our issue, is how do we enforce what regulation there is on the book while trying to operate within, like I said, this broad framework and this public-private partnership that we have with security regulations.